Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much to be here today. On my right, we have Ms. Takamatsu, our great interpreter. We have our guest, Mr. Yosuke Isozaki, an APERAS member and an advisor to the Prime Minister Shinzo Abe regarding, among other issues, secrecy laws. My name is Baumgartner. I'm the treasurer of the club. We are very happy to receive Mr. Isozaki. Every country has secrecy laws, and I have to admit that it was not easy for me to convince my French colleagues at Radio France to produce some stories about the secrecy laws. They told me, well, we have also our secrecy laws, so what? But even big foreign news organizations in Tokyo, which are represented in our club, were very quiet about it, did not make any noise. But some of our colleagues were very much agitated and imagined already the opening of a Japanese version of Guantanamo detention center in some islands in Japan with water torture for a journalist who convicted of leaking state secrets in Japan. I hope Mr. Isozaki will reassure our colleagues before they start a hunger strike or immolate themselves in front of the Japanese diet at a time when Prime Minister Abe is working to transform its position from a legislative manager to commander-in-chief, according to Mr. Tobias Harris, an analyst of Japanese politics, in an article published yesterday in the Financial Times. Secrecy laws have not prevented Edward Snowden, Bradley Manning, Julian Assange to release classified documents. And more a state tries to hide misdeeds, more a whistleblower like Edward Snowden will be encouraged to risk everything to release secret documents. And please note that our established media, at a few exceptions like The Guardian, are very quiet about the fate of Edward Snowden, Bradley Manning, Julian Assange. Time magazine has named Pope Francis as the Man of the Year. The FT has chosen Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba. Only so far a Swiss newspaper, a conservative one, the NZZ am Sonntag, has named Edward Snowden as the person of the year. So please reserve a very warm welcome to Mr. Isozaki.
Yeah. 皆さんどうもこんにちは、安倍内閣で内閣総理大臣補佐官を務めます磯崎陽介でございます。今日は特派員協会にお招きいただきまして本当にありがとうございました。
Thank you very much. As was mentioned a few moments ago, I am serving as the special advisor to Prime Minister Abe. My name is Yosuke Isozaki. Thank you very much for inviting me today.
はい、早速お話に入りますけど、民主党政権時代に、尖閣列島で中国船が日本の海上保安庁の船に衝突するという事件がありました。
So I'd like to start right away. As you may recall, during the administration of the Democratic Party of Japan, there was an incident where a Chinese ship rammed into or crashed into or collided with a Japan Coast Guard ship near the Senkaku Islands.
あの時にビデオがですね、一人の海上保安官によって、公開されました。
As you may remember, there was a video of this incident that was released by an officer working for the Japan Coast Guard.
でもこの他にもですね、まだ十数時間に上るその衝突関連のビデオがあったんです。
But separately from the footage that he released or made public, there are over 10 hours of related footage that was not released.
はい、その時私は野党議員でしたけれど、予算委員会の理事のポストにありました。
At that time, I was a member of the opposition party, one of the opposition parties, and I was also serving as one of the DG or directors of the budget committee.
私は野党を代表して政府、特に海上保安庁に対してすべてのビデオを 公開するように迫ったのです。
In fact, my role at that time was to speak on behalf of all of the opposition parties, and I put pressure on the government saying that they should release all of that footage that was taken by the Japan Coast Guard.
しかしなかなか海上保安庁は言うことを聞いてくれなかったので、その時に大畑さんといって今の民主党の幹事長ですけれど、彼が国土交通大臣をやってまして、私はその国土交通大臣である大畑さんと直接に交渉しました。
However, the Japan Coast Guard did not comply with our request. Therefore, I went and spoke with the minister in charge. The minister in charge was the Minister of Land Infrastructure, Transportation and Tourism, Mr. Ohata. Mr. Ohata now is the Secretary General of the Democratic Party, but I went to speak directly with Mr. Ohata to try to get him to release the videos.
その結果、私は、このビデオを公にしないことは国益に反することだから、なんとか公開してほしいということで、最終的に話がついて、残りの十数時間のビデオがすべて国会に公開されることになりました。
In other words, I went to him and said that if you do not release the remaining 10 plus hours of video footage, that would be against the national interest of Japan. As a result, my negotiation was successful and that footage was released.
はい、何が言いたいかというと、私も国会議員として情報公開というのは非常に大切なものであると、そういう立場で今日もお話をしたいと思います。
So what am I trying to say by giving you this story, telling you this story? It's because I want to emphasize to you that I am a representative of the Diet. I'm a Diet member, and as such, I feel very, very strongly in the importance of information disclosure. That is the position from which I speak today.
はい、その中で今回の特定秘密保護法案ですが、正直言ってこんなに大騒ぎになるとは思っていなかったんです。
So that leads me, of course, to this bill that was recently passed, the especially designated secrets bill. And to be very, very honest, I never thought there would be such an uproar about this bill.
我々のちょっと想像力が足らなかったところもあるのかもしれませんが、我々はそんな大きく国民の世論を二分するような法律を出した考えではなかったんです。
In other words, perhaps we simply lacked imagination to not be able to predict the kind of reaction that we got from the public. But what I'm saying is that there was never any intent on our part, or never any expectation on our part, that we would be presenting a bill that would split Japanese society in two.
まず総理もよく言うんでありますけれど、例えばオスプレイの写真を携帯電話で写真を撮ってですね、それを自分のホームページに掲げたら懲役5年になるということを書いた新聞もあります。
For example, this is actually a story that Prime Minister Abe often refers to. There was a story that appeared in a newspaper that said, to take an extreme case, a person could take a photograph of the osprey and using that person's cell phone and take that photograph and put it on that person's homepage, and as a result, that person might be subjected to incarceration penalty of up to 5 years.
最後には有名な映画監督が出てきましてですね、私はもう映画を撮ることはできませんと、また私のかつて撮った映画ももう上映できないでしょうとおっしゃいました。
In fact, things became so heated that a very famous film producer, film director, said that I probably will not be able to direct any more films. I will not be able to make any more films, and probably my films of the past will no longer be able to be shown.
今の民主主義国家の日本でそんなことがあり得るんでしょうか。
But my question in response to that is, in this democratic nation of Japan, can such a situation truly possibly arise?
最初に大事なことは、私がずっとこの法律で秘密が増えるわけではないと訴え続けたのでありますけれども、そのことがなかなか理解されませんでした。
I think the first important thing that I would like to convey to you, and this is something that I've been saying for some time now, is that by the passage of this bill, it is not that the numbers of state secrets will increase. In other words, the numbers of secrets will not increase, but in spite of the fact that I've been saying this over and over again, it seems to not have been comprehended by people.
どういうことかというと、まず国には大きな秘密というのがあります。これたくさんあります。
What I'd like to explain is that, first of all, in a state, there are many, many secrets. It's a big, large number of secrets.
その中で特に重要なものを特別管理秘密として で今でも管理しています。
And of the very, very large number of secrets that exist in Japan, there are some that are considered to be very, very important or nature, and they are labeled as
特別、スペシャルマネージというかな。
Specially managed secrets. Excuse me, the interpreter looked it up before, but she cannot find the translation for this. But it is a special, literal translation would be specially managed or administered secrets.
でその中から今回の特定秘密を指定するわけなんです。
And from this smaller category of especially managed secrets, we will now have, according to this passage of this bill, a smaller category that will be specially designated secrets.
今でも軍事秘密については似たような法律があります。
As you know, in regard to military secrets, there is already a similar law in place.
それを今回外交や秘密やそれからテロ、それからスパイの捜査の秘密にも広げようという法律です。
So what we are doing is taking this fundamental secrecy bill that exists for military related matters or defense related matters and expanding that category so we can include very special secrets that have to do with foreign policy, diplomacy, and also in regard to information that is related to investigations for spy activities and investigations for terrorist activities.
だけど今でも外交秘密やそのテロ、スパイの秘密というのは今でも秘密なんです。
But I would also like to again to explain that already there are secrets in these other three categories. In other words, in regard to foreign affairs, diplomacy, and in regard to terrorist activities, and in regard to spy activities, there are already secrets that have been designated as such in the current government.
じゃあこの法律で何が変わるかというと、今まで普通の秘密は国家公務員法で1年以下の懲役ということで守られてきましたけれど、今回この懲役を10年以下に引き上げると、これが、要はこれだけなんですね。
So you may therefore ask, if these secrets already existed in these four categories, then what is so different? What is the big change that we're seeing with this new law? And if I were to explain it in very simple terms, I think it is that in regard to these normal other three area secrets, they were covered by the National Public Servants Law or National Public Servants Act. In other words, if a civil servant leaked such information, he or she would be subject to incarceration of up to 1 year. What we have done is made this penalty much more severe, raise the 1 year limit to 10 years or less.
もう一度言いますけど、秘密が増えるわけではないんです。
But I will again repeat, just for clarification, the number of secrets will not increase.
なぜこういうことが必要になるかというと、今回、国家安全保障会議 NSC というものを作りました。これから日本の艦艇は世界中の艦艇とつながっていきます。その中で世界標準の秘密の保護制度を作る必要があったんです。
So again, why did we need this change? It is because we are establishing the Japanese version of a National Security Council. And once this National Security Council has been established, it means that the Japanese Prime Minister's office will have to be able to share information, will be more closely linked with similar offices, presidential offices or Prime Minister's offices in other nations. As a result, Japan had a need to put together a new secrecy law that would be of international worldwide standards.
もう一つの問題は秘密が増えると言っている人はですね、原発の秘密が指定される、あるいは TPP の秘密が指定されるというようなことを言う人はたくさんいました。
Also, some of the people who were against this bill or this law said that one of the dangers of this bill might be that not only would the number of secrets increase, which I've been saying repeatedly it will not happen, but not only will the numbers of secrets be increased, but also there could be information regarding nuclear power plants or information regarding the TPP process that might be designated as state secrets.
これも全く間違いです。
Again, I will say very clearly here that is a mistake. That is a mistaken interpretation.
テロについてはテロの捜査に関する情報は特定秘密になることがありえますけれど、テロリストに利用されるという理由で秘密が指定されることはありません。
I would like again to be very, very clear. The special designated secrets refers to information that has to do with investigations about terrorist activities. But simply information that, if known, might possibly be used by terrorists, that information would not be designated as a state secret.
同じように経済情報が特定秘密に指定されることもありません。
Based on this similar understanding, economic information in itself would be designated as state secrets.
で、一番面白かったのが、居酒屋、わかりますね。居酒屋のお話がたくさん出てきました。
As I watched the different arguments presented against this bill, one of the things that I found quite almost interesting or entertaining was the kind of conversations that you could possibly have in a bar or a drinking place.
お酒を飲んでいるときに後ろで公務員が特定秘密の話をしているのを聞いてしまったと。もうそれだけで懲役になるという人がいます。
In other words, someone presented this extreme example, a hypothetical example that you could be drinking in a bar, and behind you there could be a civil servant employee who was talking about a specially designated secret, and just having overheard that person, you could be possibly penalized.
で、それをホームページに書いたら、またこれも捕まると言っている人もいました。
And there are the people who have said that if you use this information and put it up on your homepage, for example, you would be subjected to incarceration.
これは法律を読めばすぐ分かることなんですけれど、一般の国民の情報取得罪も情報漏洩罪もありません。
But if one were to read the actual bill itself or the law itself, you would see that these stories are just simply not feasible. They're just not the truth. In other words, there are no criminal designations of average citizens gaining information or average people leaking information. It does not cover average people.
しかしこういったことを日本のテレビや新聞は報道を続けたのであります。
However, in spite of the fact that this is an erroneous interpretation of the bill, this kind of information was consistently broadcast on Japanese television and in newspapers.
で、これは特に申し上げておかなければなりませんけれど、ジャーナリストの取材についてはこれは一切罪にはならないという、これはしっかりした条文を書き込んでいます。
And I would also like to make it very, very clear that there is actually language written in the law that says that when journalists engage in news gathering activities, there is no way that they would be subjected to penalties.
じゃあこの法律で何が変わるのかということですけど、これはまた最初に戻りますけれど、懲役1年が懲役10年に変わるだけなんです。
So, therefore, the question might arise, then what is the point of this bill? What is the big change that will occur as a result of this bill? And that will go back to what I said at the very beginning. The only fundamental difference is that the penalty placed upon civil servants for leaking information has been raised from a maximum of 1 year incarceration to a maximum of 10 years.
でまたこの法律のもう一つの目的が適正評価というのを公務員に対して実施することになっておりますが、これも今でも法律の根拠はありませんけれど、実際にやっているんです。
Another difference that will appear as a result of this bill, or that has been codified in this bill, is that in regard to civil servants who have access to these special secrets, they will undergo an evaluation, an assessment to see if they are appropriate people to handle such information. Having said this, however, this kind of assessment is already being conducted, even though there is nothing in the laws, written laws, that provide for such activities.
だから最初に言いましたように、この法律で秘密が増えるわけでもないということだけ合意ができれば、こんな騒ぎにはならなかったんではないかと今でも思ってますし、それはもちろん、マスコミだけの責任するんではなくて、我々の説明不足もあったんだと思います。
So, as I said at the beginning, I think the most important thing that we had trouble with was the fact that people did not understand our fundamental position, which is that as a result of the passage of this bill, the number of state secrets will not increase. If we had been able to gain understanding or agreement about this fundamental concept, I do not think we would have experienced the kinds of conflicts that we saw. I'm not simply blaming the mass media for this. I realize that from our side, we probably did not explain our ideas or position or our thoughts clearly enough.
でもう一つはやはり私たちは民主党もこの法律に賛成してくれると思ってました。なぜならば安倍政権が政権を引き継いだときにこの法案の原案はおおむねできてたんです。
Another thing that perhaps we did not imagine correctly or foresee was the fact that the DPJ, the Democratic Party, would oppose this bill. We had thought that they would be in favor of it, in part because when Prime Minister Abe's administration took over the reins from the previous DPJ-led administration, the fundamental framework or foundation for this law was already in place.
この法案の検討は、前の自民党が与党時代に始まったものでありますけれど、先ほど言った中国船衝突事件から民主党が特に力を入れて検討してきた課題であるんです。
In other words, of course, the idea for a secrecy bill was already being deliberated by previous LDP-led administrations. However, as I mentioned earlier, the incident involving the Japan Coast Guard official revealing footage about the Chinese ship in the Senkaku, near the Senkaku Islands, that was an incident that occurred under the DPJ-led administrations, and as a result, they put together a fundamental draft bill.
民主党は今回の国会で対案を出したとは思いますけれど、民主党がほぼ全面対決のようなことになったのはちょっと我々も想像外でした。
Of course, in the previous diet session, the Democratic Party did put forth a sort of alternative bill, but the fact that they would be so directly and 100% opposed or with our bill was something that we simply had not imagined would occur.
法案を出したときに、その民主党政権時代の官房長官である枝野幸男さんが、やはりこれは情報公開法とセットでなければダメだという指摘をしました。
As you may remember, that when the bill was first presented to the Diet, Mr. Yukio Edano of the DPJ, who in previous DPJ-led administration served as the chief cabinet secretary, said that the passage of this secrecy bill would only be possible if it was done in conjunction with the passage of an information disclosure law.
それをセットで一緒に行うべきだという。
That an information disclosure bill should also be considered as in conjunction with or as part of a set with the secrecy bill.
これは私は非常にいい考えだと思いました。
I thought that was a very, very valid, a very good way of thinking about this problem.
なぜならばさっき言いましたように、大きな秘密の中から今回は特定秘密を指定するというこういう法律ですね。
The reason for this is, as I mentioned earlier, first of all, you have a huge basket in which all of the secrets belonging to the government state exist, and within this larger basket, you have a smaller category of very important secrets that we would like to designate as specially designated secrets.
だからここの真ん中の部分のその何年で開示するかとか、あるいはそれを監督する第三者機関をどうするかというのももちろん重要な議論でありました。
In other words, in regard to this central portion, I believe that a discussion about how long these secrets should be so designated and what should be done in regard to having maybe some kind of a third-party oversight party that would look at these secrets. I mean, that kind of a deliberation or discussion was, I felt, very important.
しかしこの下に他に一般の秘密がたくさんあるわけであります。これをどうやって国民の皆さんに開示するかということももう一つの大きな議論であったはずなんです。
But I also thought that in regard outside of the specially designated secrets, there are these other secrets, the larger basket of secrets held by the state, and I think we also needed discussion about how information disclosure should be handled for those general secrets as well.
そのことに気がついていたのが与党である公明党と民主党の枝野さんでなかったかと私は思います。
In other words, I believe that in regard to this matter, it was the Komeito party, part of the ruling coalition, and the DPJ, in particular Mr. Edano, who focused on and brought these important matters to light.
自民党のこの法案の取りまとめをやったのが町村信孝元官房長官です。
As you know, within the LDP, it was Mr. Machimura, who was the former chief cabinet secretary, who was in charge of the team that brought together or drafted this bill.
私は町村さんにぜひ自民党、公明党、民主党の3党の枠組みの中で 情報公開法の改正する方向について取りまとめをしてほしいというお願いをしていました。
I had asked Mr. Machimura to try to prepare an information disclosure bill as well that would be within the framework of cooperation between the LDP, the Komito, and the DPJ, these three parties.
この臨時国会でその議論ができればもっと実りある国会になったと思うんでありますが、民主党がもう全面反対の態度になったもんでありますから、その議論は立ち消えになってしまいました。
What I'm saying is that in this past extraordinary session of the Diet, I think it would have been very good if we had been able to have a discussion about these matters. However, because the DPJ took such a strong stance that they completely opposed the secrecy bill, we were not able to extend the discussion and cover very important other aspects such as information disclosure bill. So I think that was very, very unfortunate.
しかし自民党は公明党との間に情報公開法の改正を約束していますから、次の国会以降ですね、情報公開法の議論、ぜひとも民主党も入ってですね、そういういい議論になることを私は期待をいたしております。
However, within the ruling coalition, in other words, the LDP and the Komito promised each other that we would discuss in future revision of the information disclosure law, so that I hope in future sessions of the Diet we will be able to have fruitful discussions, deliberations on information disclosure bills with the DPJ as well.
どこの国でも国家安全保障上の秘密というのはあります。
As you know, in every nation in the world there are state secrets.
それを守るための法律を作ることは、これは皆さんご理解いただけると思います。
I think everyone will understand that there is therefore a need to have a law in place that will protect these secrets.
そしてもちろんそれは一定の枠をはめたものでなければ、そのどこまでが秘密であるということについてしっかりと枠をはめたものでなければなりません。
And of course, it is also very, very important to have a kind of framework to ensure that the secrets are somehow limited or restricted. In other words, you have to have very clear lines drawn as to how much or how far something can be designated as state secret.
それを行うために年明けにも情報保全諮問会議というのを設立して、もう少し細かい指定の基準、指定、解除、更新などの基準を作る作業に入っていきたいと思います。
So as soon as we enter the new year, what is on the political calendar is to establish a committee, which literally would be translated as an advisory committee on state-designated secrets. And it is going to be up to this committee to deliberate the issue and to try to create new standards for classification of documents, a declassification of documents, extending the state secrets designation of documents, etc.
それと合わせまして第三者機関の設立ということもこれも法律に書かれておりますので、新しい監督機関のようなものも今から検討して作っていきたいと思います。
Also, it has been written into the law that there will be established a third-party organization that will kantoku or supervise or monitor the implementation of this law. In other words, it will be a new organization. So, in regard to the establishment of this new organization, we will begin deliberations very soon.
政府の中に作るのは第三者機関ではないという批判をよくいただきますけれど、世界中の国で安全保障のトップシークレットを政府の外の人が監視をしているようなシステムはどこの国にもありません。
I know that we have sometimes been subjected to criticism as that creating a third-party organization to monitor these state secrets, if you create such an organization within the government, that is not a true independent third-party organization. I understand these arguments. However, if you look at all of the countries of the world, when you are talking about the monitoring or supervising of national secrets that have to do with security issues, I do not believe there is any country in the world that has an independent organization outside of government handling or monitoring such secrets.
そういうことを通じてこの秘密保護制度をもっと国民に分かりやすい制度にしていきたいと思います。
Having said all of this, our future goal is to, as we create these new systems and organizations, to also be able to explain these new systems and these organizations in a more understandable way to the general public.
一方で先ほど言った情報公開の制度であるとか、あるいは公文書の管理であるという仕組み、まだ日本では歴史が浅くて、私は十分なものではないと思います。
On the other hand, as I mentioned earlier, in regard to information disclosure, the system for information disclosure, in regard also to the management of national official documents, archival documents, the history in Japan of handling such matters is really quite brief. We do not have a very long and established history. I think we therefore need to discuss these matters in the future.
そういうことを、そうした制度をしっかりと作っていくことによって、より国民の知る権利に応える、そういう国家にしていきたいと思います。
In other words, I believe that one of the challenges facing us, is that we want to, in the future, create a very strong system for covering information disclosure and the handling of official documents. And in doing so, we believe we will be able to secure the citizens' right to know.
今日は本当に繰り返しになりますけれど、この法律は秘密を増やす法律ではありません。
So I do apologize for repeating myself again and again, but I would again like to clarify the most important thing about this law is it is not a law designed to increase the number of state secrets.
そのことを理解していただければ、いろんな疑問ももっと冷静に議論ができたんではないかと思います。
I feel very strongly if this fundamental concept could have been better understood, then I think we would have been able to have a more calm and measured debate about the remaining questions that people might have had about this bill.
そのことはまた後でご質問いただきたいと思いますが、今日のご提案はそれ以外の一般の秘密についてもより国民に公開できるような仕組みを日本としても作っていく必要があるということをご提案したかったんです。
So in regard to these matters, I would like to respond to any questions that you might have later. But I would also like to add that one other thing that I wanted to stress and propose today is that not only just in regard to the state designated secrets, especially designated secrets, but in regard to more general secrets held by the government, we need, I think, to be able to put together a system in which information disclosure can be secured for those secrets as well.
はい。大体30分話しましたので、この辺で終わりにしたいと思いますが、どうぞいろいろご質問いただければありがたいと思います。
So thank you for your kind attention. I've reached the appointed time limit, 30 minutes, so I would now like to respond to your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Isozaki. We open the floor to our colleagues and also to our Japanese colleagues if they want to ask a question. Please, Khaldun first.
Thank you for the presentation. Now we feel a little bit unworried about the situation after your clarifications. My name is Khaldun Azhari, Pan-Oriental News. You mentioned that there will be no more secrets after this law is adopted. So how can you confirm this? I mean, secrets depends on the events. So I don't know how you can guarantee that you will have certain amount of events that guarantee that the current secrets will not increase. It's a little bit vague for me, this statement. Also, you mentioned that the Japanese people fundamentally don't understand the law, but we know Japanese are smart people and they know, and there's freedom of expression here. So do you think the government should take responsibility for not explaining the law, and they should give it more time, not to push it through the Diet, and the opposition parties now want to scrap this bill? Do you think that is a good time for that? Thank you.
まず最後のところでありますけど、国会の審議がですね、混乱したのは、もう少しやはり審議時間を確保すべきであったと、我々も というか総理も率直にそこは反省しているところであります。
I would like to make several comments. First of all, in regard to your pointing out that the people perhaps had not enough time to consider or to learn about this bill, the fact that we didn't have enough deliberating time within the night session, that is something that we do regret, and I think Prime Minister Abe has also expressed regret about that.
秘密の数が増えないというのはどういう意味か、それは概念的な意味で申し上げたんです。
When I talked about the number of secrets not increasing, what I was saying was giving you a concept.
個々の秘密は増えたり減ったり当然します。
Of course, if we're talking about specific numbers of secrets, of course it might be that they might increase or decrease depending on the times.
ただ何が言いたいかというと、今まであった保護されている秘密の枠がこれによって広がるわけではないということを言いたかったわけです。
What I was trying to explain was the fundamental concept, which is that the framework that we use for holding state secrets now or deciding which pieces of information are secrets now, that framework will not be changed in any way.
現在ある先ほどの特別管理秘密ね、特別管理秘密42万件ありますが、そのうち9割が衛星写真です。
For example, in regard to the specially controlled or specially managed secrets that I mentioned earlier, this is a designation that exists in the current government, under the current laws. There are about 420,000 such pieces of information, and about 90% of that 420,000 pieces of information are actually satellite photographs.
その次に多いのが暗号の解読でありまして、その次にはその自衛隊の装備のそれぞれの規格に関する、この部品の情報です。
The next largest number of pieces of information are things that have to do with codes, secret codes, and the analytical work that has been done to break certain codes. And number 3 is information regarding equipment or parts, components of equipment used by the self-defense forces, and also the plans for equipment used by the self-defense forces.
今後、先ほど言った情報保全諮問会議でこれの具体的なもっと詳しい法律よりも詳しい基準を作っていきます。指定基準を作っていきます。
As I mentioned earlier, we are going to be putting together a new advisory council, and, the interpreter mistranslated the name of this advisory council earlier. It's not the specially designated secrets advisory council, but rather it's information preservation advisory council. And this council will now deliberate more specific standards or criteria for designated secrets than has been described in the law itself now.
したがってその基準はこれは公開をいたしますので、今までの日本の秘密は何が秘密か本当に分からなかったんでありますが、この法律を通すことによってどういうものが国のトップシークレットとして扱っているのかというのは、いわゆるグループ分けではかなり明確になってくるわけです。
In other words, this advisory group will deliberate new criteria, and this new criteria or these new standards will be announced to the public. In other words, I think this is in a sense a step forward, because until now the average person did not know what kinds of information were designated as state secrets, and now at least people will be able to have a kind of framework. They will know what kinds of groups of information, what categories of information might be designated as state secrets.
これは私は民主主義に資するのではないかと考えているところであります。
In other words, I believe that this goes in accordance with democratic principles.
There is another aspect in the second part of the question regarding the responsibility of the government for not informing properly the people about the content of the secrecy laws and the impact of these laws on freedom of information.
そうですね、まだその長い質問だったのでございますが、まだお答えしていない部分もあったと思うのでございます。一つはやはりこの秘密保護法の内容についてきちんと政府側が一般の方たちにそれを伝えなかったっていう、怠った部分があるんじゃないかということでございます。そしてまたこの法律が通ったことによってその表現の自由に何か悪影響が与えるのではないか ということでございます。これについていかがでしょうか。
我々は国民に対する広報、やったつもりなんですけれど、今ご指摘があったように、結果的にはやっぱり反省すべき点、もっともっと分かりやすくご説明すべきであったんではないかと思います。
In addition to having more time to deliberate this in the Diet, we feel that we probably, in retrospect, should have taken more time and more effort to explain the contents of the bill in a very understandable way to the general public. We thought we had done this. We thought we had done appropriate public relations work to try to make this understandable, but apparently, in retrospect, it was not enough.
ただ、情報と知る権利の関係については、日本では古い最高裁判所の判例があって、適正な取材についてはこれは罰することがないという判例があるので、それでご理解いただけるんではないかと我々は考えていました。
In regard to information and the citizens' right to know, as you know, there was an old Supreme Court decision which is used quite often as a precedent in regard to this matter, and the verdict basically said that if news gathering was conducted in an appropriate manner, appropriate manner, then that kind of news gathering activity would not be subject to penalties.
それも与党の公明党との協議の中で、法律の中にきちんと書くようにしました。
So as a result of deliberations between the two ruling parties, the Liberal Democratic Party and the Komeito, we decided to insert language in the law.
で繰り返しになりますけれど、一般国民を何らか規制するような規定がこの中に入っているわけではありません。
So again, I do apologize for repeating myself, but for average citizens, regular citizens, there is nothing inside the law that limits their activities or that focuses on their activities.
Anthony, and then.
Anthony Rowley, Singapore Business Times. Sorry, before I ask my main question, could you clarify your own status, please? I mean, you're a special advisor to the Prime Minister. Why? If that's not a state secret, why are you? You were or are a member of Minster, I think, or unless I'm... No? No, beg your pardon.
Of course, I'm a member of the LDP.
Oh, I say, I misunderstood. All right, okay.
ちょっとなんかその民主党の方だと勘違いしておりましたので、なぜその特別補佐官になっているのかっていうのを最初に聞きたかったのでございますが、自民党の議員でいらっしゃいます。
I apologize, my mistake.
すみません。
It's not a secret.
これは国家秘密ではありませんので。
Yeah, okay. You give lots of assurances that there will not be no increase in the number of secrets, that there will be protection of journalists, for example, if they're doing their job and so on. But it seems to me that so much is at the discretion of ministerial discretion in this. Now, as I understand it, or misunderstand it maybe, the courts will have no jurisdiction in this, the Diet will have no jurisdiction in this. So given that that is the case and that there's so much discretion left to ministers, how can one possibly know what is being added to secrets lists, how the law is, or how the act is being interpreted, and so on? What safeguards are there to which go beyond the? And secondly, if this is all about so that one National Security Council can talk to another National Security Council, and presumably National Security Councils are concerned mainly with security, military matters, why is it necessary to expand the scope of the what's covered? Why not simply rely on what's already covered by the Military Secrets Act?
はい、2つ、聞きたいと思うんでございます。今お話を聞いておりますと、秘密の数は増えない、そしてまたジャーナリストの活動は、適正な活動であればそれはちゃんと保護されているというようなお話をしていらっしゃるわけでございます。しかしながら、私が、もしかしたら誤解しているかもしれませんが、私がその法律を理解している限り、やはり基本的には各その行政機関の長、大臣などの裁量権っていうんでしょうか、ディスクレッションというのが非常に大きな役割を果たすというふうに感じるのでございます。つまりその裁判司法のあるいはその議会はあんまり直接管轄権というんでしょうか、ジュリスディクションというのを持たないものというふうになっている感じがするんでございます。ということになりますと、本当にこの の判断が正しいかどうか、そして何がどういうふうに判断されているのかっていうのを確認する、そういうようなことをチェックする、いわゆるセーフガードっていうんでしょうか、そのチェック機能っていうのはどうやって確保できるんでございますでしょうか。そして2つ目の質問でございますが、今回このような法律は必要だというその一つの理由は、やっぱりその各国のその、国家安全保障会議が他の国、日本のNSC が他の国の NSC と自由に話せるその体制が必要ということだったのでございますが、やっぱり NSC 同士といいますのは、軍事的な、またあるいはその安全保障に関する、課題を扱うと思うのでございますので、なぜこの新しい法律によってその、領域っていうんでしょうか、枠を広げなきゃいけないんでございますでしょうか。すでにその、軍事秘密、安全保障に関する秘密っていうのは十分にもうすでに保護されていると思うのでございますが、なぜこの、その、範囲を拡大しなきゃいけなかったんでしょうか。
まず一つ目の話でありますけど、皆さんの国が全部しているわけではありませんけど、どこの国でも国家安全保障上の秘密は、それは政府が指定をしていると思います。
First of all, in regard to your first question, I don't know about all of the nations of the world, but I believe that fundamentally all nations of the world have a system for designating specific pieces of information that have to do with national security as state secrets.
それを国会がコントロールしたり、あるいは政府の外の第三者機関が許可をするというような仕組みは、私は世界にはないと聞いております。
To the best of my understanding, in regard to these national security related secrets, I do not know of any examples where there is a third party organization outside of the government or that has control over these secrets, or that there is and there is no example where a national parliament or Congress has control over these secrets either.
しかし今回の議論も、あるいは原案の中にもあったわけでありますけれど、政府の中に第三者的な機関を作って監督するということも入れました。また最初から原案にあったんでありますけど、国会や裁判所、それから情報公開審査会に対しても一定の条件の下でこの情報は提供できるということになっております。
Also, and this was something that was included in the original draft of the bill, we wanted to be able to establish a third-party a quasi-third-party organization within the government to basically supervise the implementation of the law, in other words, the designation of state secrets. Also, we had in the original draft of the bill some kind of a proviso that would allow, under certain specific conditions, for this information disclosure to be done for the Diet and for the courts and for another organization called the Information Disclosure Deliberation or Review Committee.
だからこういうものは事後的な関与になるんだと思います。だから指定の段階から行政以外のところが指定について関与するというのは非常に難しいんだと思います。
But these other parties' involvement in this process would be after the fact. In other words, after something had been designated a state secret. What I'm saying is that I think it would be very difficult to have a party outside of government to be able to be involved in the state secrets designation process.
で、2つ目の質問は、安全保障に関する情報は今でも守られているのではないかというご指摘がありました。
And in regard to your second question, I believe it has to do with the fact that you're saying basically that security-related secrets are already protected.
それがだからこれも繰り返しになりますけど、今は国家公務員法という秘密法制じゃないところで懲役1年と守秘義務で守られています。
And again, I will be repeating myself, but what I'm saying is that there are protections in place now. But if you look at, for example, the Public Servants, National Civil Servants law, for leaking information, state secret information, you could be subjected to a penalty of up to 1 year incarceration.
だから今回は安全保障に関するトップシークレットについては懲役10年に上げたわけでありますけれど、それは世界の国々に見ると8 懲役8年とか10年とか15年、アメリカは死刑までありますけれど、そんなもんで守られているわけですね。
And now what we're doing is we are making the penalty much more severe. In other words, we're raising that penalty, maximum penalty, to up to 10 years incarceration. And we believe that this is very similar to what is being done in other nations of the world. There are, for leaking state secrets, civil servants can be given 8 years, 10 years, 15 years imprisonment. In the United States, you could even be executed.
これも繰り返しになりますけど、今回の法律の目的は何かといったら、公務員に対する罰則の強化であったわけでありますから、それが今回の法律の最大の必要理由であったわけであります。
So I apologize again for repeating myself, but the fundamental and most important goal of this bill was to increase the penalty for civil servants for leaking information.
My German colleague first.
その安全保障とか軍事的に秘密以外のものまで枠を広げる必要があるっていう質問
だから広げたんではないということですよね。
So in regard to, excuse me, the interpreter was just apologizing if the interpretation was not completely correct, and explaining that your question was also about expanding the framework or the categories for secrets being covered. And his fundamental response is that framework has not been increased.
今でも秘密です。もう一回。
In other words, the kinds of secrets that are being kept secret now is going to be the same after the implementation of the bill, is Mr. Isozaki's position.
Okay.
No, Siegfried Gill, freelancer from Germany. You said you don't know a country with a kind of parliamentarian control over secrets, but that's exactly the case in Germany. Germany has a committee of parliamentarians based on parliamentarians from all parties to control the secret operation of the state and the secret of the secrets. So would it be necessary to have a kind of a parliamentarian control? I think this is a sign of a democratic state, that the parliamentarian can control what the government does.
先ほどのドイツのフリーランスのものでございます。先ほど全世界におきまして例えば国会がそういう機密指定などをコントロールする支配するそういうような例をご存じないという話があったんでございますが、実はドイツにはそういうものがあるわけでございます。議会の中にいわゆる議員の委員会っていうのがあるわけでございます。で、委員会のメンバーは各政党の代表が入っているわけでございます。で、実際に国が秘密の指定、そのプロセスなどを全部支配するわけでございます。監督するわけでございます。でありますので、やはり日本におきましても同じように議会内にそういうような議員が実際に秘密指定のプロセスをコントロールできるようなそういうような体制が必要とされるのではないでしょうか。つまりそれこそ民主主義の現れになると思うのでございます。つまり議会が政府を行政をコントロールするという意味で。
先ほど言ったのは最初の秘密の指定をですね、行政以外のところがやっているところはないと申し上げたんです。
I would like to clarify what I was saying earlier is that I don't know of any place in the world where, for example, there is a non administrative part of the government, in other words, for example, the Diet, having participation in the state secrets process from the very beginning. In other words, when a piece of information is first designated a state secret, I don't believe there is any organization, there's any country in the world which has a non-administrative part of the government involved in that process.
したがって先進国の多くにですね、秘密を専門に扱う委員会というのが置かれているのは私も知っております。
Having said this, I also am aware that in most of the advanced nations of the world, there are also committees in place that are focusing on this specific idea of looking at state secrets.
で、日本も今回、今国会が中心になってこれから日本の国会の中にそういうこのスーパーバイズするですね、委員会を作ろうという議論が、年明けにも始まると聞いております。
Also in Japan, therefore, I have been told that probably when we see new Diet session begin at in 2014, we will begin to see have deliberations about the possibility of establishing a similar committee within the Diet as well, in the Japanese Diet as well, to basically supervise this state secrets policy.
私は今政府の立場だから、いろいろ言うことはできませんけれど、その動きは基本的には歓迎しているところです。
Because today I come here as a representative of the administrative side of government, I cannot comment too much about these matters. However, I can say that I personally welcome such activities in the Diet. In other words, to establish a parliamentarians committee to oversee or supervise the state secrets policy.
Jimbo-san, and then Mr.
No.
Mary, you don't have any questions?
Terry Jimbo で videonews.com and the director at FCCJ 磯崎先生に日本語で質問させていただきます。何度も取材させていただいてありがとうございます。それから今回ですね、今週中谷元防衛長官がこちらに来られて、ちょっといくつか質問が出た中でどうもはっきりしないことがありました。それからその後石破幹事長も実は日本記者クラブで発言されたことで、やはりちょっとぜひ磯崎議員に確認したいことがあるんですけれども、先ほどからこの法律は秘密を増やすわけではないと。罰則をただ上げただけだというお話ですが、一つ大きな重要な変更点が、今回は法律で、一般の市民にも、これは罰則がいく場合があるというふうに書いてあるところが一番大きな変更点だと思います。そこでこれはジャーナリストに限らず、一般の市民、例えば内部告発をする人間とか、あるいは NPO とかも同じかもしれませんが、今週特にここと日本記者クラブで争点になったのがですね、先週ですかなったのがですね、そのジャーナリストがあるいはその市民団体でも結構です。取得をすることについては第24条でそれが外国の利益を増進させることであったり国内の安全保障を脅かすことが目的でなければ、中谷先生インテントっていう言葉言われてましたけど、目的でなければ阻却される、取得は問題ないんだと。ただしそこにはその取得しか書いてなくて、それを公表する、公開する、それは報道だけに限りません。公表、表沙汰にするということについては中谷議員も石破幹事長も、石破さんは一旦これは罰せられるべきだというような感じのことを言って、それは撤回されましたけれども、やはりその公表はまずいだろうということが中谷さん、それから石破さんからの一貫した石破さんは立法意思という言葉まで使って、これはできないはずだという言葉を言われた。そこでお伺いしなきゃいけないのは、これはその公表を前提とした場合に、公表ですね、特にジャーナリストが入手したらそれを報じるわけですから、公表を前提とした場合に取得は阻却されると書いてあるが、公表のための取得であれば、公表すれば当然テロリストだって、それから外国の敵国だってこの情報を見るわけですよね。なので公表を前提とした入手は24条で免責、阻却されているのかどうか、報道、明らかに表に出すという行為を前提とした入手であれば、取得は、外国を利する行為、あるいは、日本の安全保障を損なう、ことを目的とした行為ではないというふうに見られるというふうに思われるのかどうかというのが、非常に今我々にとっては重要なポイントだと思いますので、そこをぜひ法案のですね、オリジナルの作成者でもあります磯崎先生のお話を伺いたいと思います。
Maybe you can synthesize, summarize.
So many comments have been made by, for example, Mr. Nakatani, who came here, and also Mr. Ishiba, who spoke with the Japan National Press Club. There's been much discussion. You have said repeatedly that the number of secrets will not increase, and that the increased penalty only applies to the national civil servants. However, what we think, what many people who are anxious about this bill are concerned about in regard to this law is that something new has been added, which is that there is the potential for average citizens to become the focus of this bill. In other words, they might be penalized in some way. And when we talk about average journalists, we're not only talking about journalists, but we're also talking about, for example, civil activists, maybe people who work for NPOs, NGOs. The main point that there have been conflicting comments being given is that there is an article in number 24 in the law which says that if there is no intent when a person gains information if there is no intent to perhaps aid a foreign country in giving damage to Japan, or if there is no intent to gain this information for the purpose of causing some kind of negative impact on the security situation within Japan, if there are no such negative intents, then the average citizens, journalists, NPO persons, etc., they are okay. But what we, as journalists, and what NPO and civil activists are very concerned about is that wording, gaining of information. It's basically when people such as journalists and NPO representatives gain information, it's not simply for their own personal satisfaction, but it is with the intent to release this information, to make public this information, whether it is through broadcasting or other means. And what we have to clarify is to have the assurance that if by releasing this information, by making it public, there is of course this possibility that foreign governments, enemy governments might take this information. There is a possibility that terrorists might use this information and cause some kind of damage. But if we have the intent, if journalists, average citizens, etc., have the intent to eventually use this information and make it public, would we be subject to penalties? That is the clarification that we want.
これも先ほどの講演の中で申し上げましたけど、もう一回これは明確に言っておかなければなりません。
I tried to explain this in the presentation I gave at the beginning, but I think this is a very important issue. I would like to try to clarify it again.
一般国民を対象にした情報取得罪も情報漏洩罪もこの法律にはありません。
In this bill, there is no provision of trying to 情報がない。
情報取得罪と情報漏洩罪両方ない。
There is no provision for applying, to provide penalties to average citizens for the crime of gaining information or for the crime of leaking information. There is no such provision for average citizens in this law.
だから国民が仮に特定秘密を知ってしまってもですね、それを自ら公開したからといって罰則がかかることはありません。
So, if a person were somehow, hypothetically, able to learn of a specially designated secret, and if that person, on his or her own volition, made that information public, that person would not be subjected to penalties.
正確に言うために一般国民が罰せられるのは一つだけあります。
To be very, very precise, there is only one situation in which an average citizen might be subjected to penalties.
それは特定秘密であることを知っておいてですね、知っておきながら、そして特定秘密を漏洩することが犯罪だと知っておってですね、それを公務員にそそのかした場合に限られます。
And that would be if, again, a hypothetical situation where a person, an average citizen, knew that a piece of information that he or she was trying to get was a state specially designated secret. And on top of that, with the intent of making that information public, that person sosonokasu, which is a very difficult word to translate, which is try to encourage or instigate or encourage a civil employee to divulge or leak that information, that would be the only situation in which a regular citizen might be subjected to penalty.
この場合でも取材行為は除かれています。
But having said this, however, news gathering activities would be exempt from this.
これが政府の公式解釈ですので、よろしくご理解をお願いいたします。
So I'm speaking here as an official representative of the government. This is an official interpretation, official comment. So I ask for your kind understanding.
Sir.
防衛関係の団体のワシントン特派員的な仕事をしている吉川と申すものでございます。2点ございまして、私、近代消防という会社からこの2年間の取材の成果として、今、こういう東日本大震災に関する本を書いていまして、その中でもやっぱりそういう危機管理のための役所を日本も作った方がいいし、その役所が重要なのはむしろ情報開示、どこの役所にどういう問題があるかとか、そこら辺を お互いの役所同士が知っている、そして国民にも分かるようにする、それが非常に重要なのではないかということを主張させていただきまして、間違っているとは思っておりません。で先ほどからの話を伺ってても、あと先週の中谷先生のとの話でも、防衛情報、インテリジェンスを国家安全保障会議が守る、これは当たり前。でもむしろそういう各省の持っているそれ以外の情報の開示を促進するためにも、この日本版のフィーマやホームランドセキュリティを作った方がいいんじゃないかというのが私の主張で、これどう考えかが1点。あともう1点が、今日の話と少しずれるかもしれませんけど、私アメリカの NSC やホームランドセキュリティの様子を見ていて、やはり効果的にあれだけ動くことができるのは、アメリカ型の政治任用で、その時の政権がその役所の性質を変えることができる、これ非常に重要だと思ってますし、ですから安倍内閣が今もう一つ力を入れている公務員制度改革との絡みで、今後そういう日本版の NSC や、もしそういうできる人はホームランドセキュリティで、そういうアメリカ型の政治任用がどれぐらいできるのか、やろうとお考えか、この2点よろしくお願いします。
Summarize.
Okay. Well, not to summarize, but it was done very quickly, so the interpreter's not sure she got everything.
We'll summarize even more.
Okay, so basically 2 points. First of all, I've written this book. I've covered the security matters in both Japan and the United States for some time. But basically, I've felt for a long time that we do need to have perhaps some kind of a better crisis management kind of framework or system in Japan, and perhaps a new organization should be established within the government. And I think this could also be something that could handle information disclosure not only for the general public, but to ensure that information disclosure is done between ministries and agencies within the government. Something maybe like a FEMA, for example, might be a possibility. Please give me your comments about that. And the second question has to be with something slightly perhaps different, but in regard to NSC and other organizations, the idea of in the United States of having political appointees, I think is something that allows the U.S. government to have more flexibility in having these kinds of organizations. So do you think the political appointee system should be more broadly used or introduced into Japan?
ですか。最初のやはり危機管理分野での情報公開が大事ではないかというお話、私も全く同じように思います。
In regard to your first point about having more perhaps information disclosure in regard to crisis management, I think I very much agree with your ideas.
3.11 の福島原発の事故の時にスピーディーという放射線の流れる方向を予測する情報が政府からは公開されませんでした。
As you know, after 3/11, after the nuclear power plant accident in Fukushima, the speedy data, which would have allowed people to understand in which direction radioactive materials are being blown by the wind, that information was not disclosed.
この情報が流れていれば、随分避難は変わっていたと思います。
If that information data had been made public, probably the direction in which people would evacuate might have been very, very different.
多くの人がまさに放射能の行く方向に逃げていったんです。
Unfortunately, because the information was not available, many people basically evacuated into areas that allowed them to be more irradiated than otherwise.
こういうことはしっかり反省してですね、危機管理分野の情報公開に努めていきたいと思います。
So I believe this is a very, very bitter lesson that we must all learn from, and we must try to have more information disclosure in place for crisis management situations.
政治的アポイントメント、これもちろんいろいろご意見あると思いますが、日本の場合やはり政治主導を図りながら、やはりその公務員もスタッフとしてやはり一体となってやるということも必要ですから、その辺のバランスを取ることが必要だと思います。
In regard to the idea of introducing more political appointees into the Japanese system, I think there are many, many different ideas, opinions in regard to this idea. When we look at the Japanese sort of situation, I believe that yes, on the one hand, we do need to ensure secure political leadership, and on the other hand, we do need to be able to work in a very united, uniform way with the bureaucrats who do serve as staff. So, in other words, we must constantly try to achieve a good balance between the two.
And then Peter.
Patrick Zollner, Zürcher Zeitung from Switzerland. You said that people should simply read the law and then they will understand it's not a problematic law. I would like to do that, and I actually asked Mofa and Kante to provide an official English translation. They don't seem to think it's very important. I still don't have one. Then my question, you're saying the law has just been passed. It will only enter in force in a year, and you're already talking about revising it. Isn't that a pretty lousy lawmaking if you have to revise it before it even enters into force? So why was this haste? Why did you push through this law which is, I understand, not finished?
スイスの記者でございます。先ほど法律を読んでいただければご理解していただけるというお話があったわけでございますが、私はその外務省などにお願いしてもこの英訳が全く用意されていないということでございます。やっぱりその英訳を提供するその必要性におきましてはあまりそれは重視してないというのが私の印象でございます。で、質問なんでございますが、この法律が可決されまして、施行が1年後というわけなんでございますが、まだ可決したばっかりなんですけれど、成立したばっかりなんですけれども、すでにもう改正するというお話が出ているわけでございます。ということでありますと、正直言ってあんまり良くない法案だったんじゃないかというふうに感じるんでございます。なぜそんなに問題がたくさん残るような、つまりすぐもう改正しなきゃいけないようなその法案をそんなに急いで成立しなきゃいけなかったんでしょうか。
英訳がないことはちょっとお詫びをしなきゃなりません。ちょっと私の一存で今すぐどうするということは言えませんが、少し議論してみたいと思います。
First of all, in regard to your observation that there is no English translation yet, I simply must apologize. I cannot make a decision just for the entire government, but I will certainly discuss this matter, debate this matter within the government immediately.
法律を改正するという話があると私は聞いていません。
In regard to revising the law, I have not heard anything about possibly revising the law at this point.
第三者機関のことをおっしゃっているのであれば、これは衆議院の中で修正協議をしたものを前倒しで我々がご説明しているだけなんです。
修正協議したものを
修正のものの内容をですね、はい、今この国会の中で前倒しで説明したんであって改正をしようという話ではありません。
What you may perhaps be referring to is not so much the revision of the law, but the details surrounding the establishment of a third-party organization to supervise the law. What this basically refers to is the deliberations that we had within the lower house to basically sort of amend the current law. I mean, we had sort of prior discussions about different amendments that we wanted to make to the law. This is perhaps what you're talking about. At this point, I do not know of any ideas of revising the current law.
だからそれの中で第三者機関を作るときに法的権限が加えたらどうかと。第三者機関という話はこれは国会の修正協議で出ている話でありますから、それについての法律がいるかどうか、場合によっては法律はいらないでできるかもしれません。このことについては今後検討することになっています。
そう法律が必要なのはその修正協議
でもうそこは法律でできてるんですね、はい、修正協議は法律でできてるんだけど、それに伴って第三者機関を作るときに法律がいるかいらないか、これから検討します。
So, as I mentioned earlier, the amended portions of the draft have already been incorporated into the bill, so into the law. So that does not necessitate any further laws. However, of the amendments that were brought into the final bill, the establishment of a third party, there is still some deliberation that needs to be done as to whether some kind of a legal framework, possibly another law, will have to be established to create this third-party organization.
我々はその原案も不完全なものだとは思っておりませんし、ただそれを国会で与野党の議論の中でよりいいものにしていくというのは、これは政治過程で当然のことだと思っています。
In other words, in regard to the draft bill that we proposed, we had not felt that it was insufficient in any way. Having said this, however, it is part of the normal political process that when you present a bill to a parliament or a Congress or a Diet, then you have political discussions, debates, and so that you can make it an even better bill.
Peter first, and then Anthony.
Thank you for your frank presentation. I would like to ask about...
Identify yourself.
Sorry, yes. I'm a financial analyst, Peter Fuchs, with Tokyo Investment Research. I cover Japanese markets.
Thank you.
But I'm also a former journalist. The question is in a situation of normalcy, everyone assumes the government is doing the right thing. The question is there a safeguard for whistleblowers when that individual or a group of individuals believe that the government is doing something that is unethical, wrong, or illegal, or unconstitutional? Now, this is hypothesis, but especially I think the foreign press have a sense that there is now a party which has control of two houses, is moving towards a discussion of revision of constitutional matters. In a sense, Japan is moving, shall we say, rightward or backward towards a more control-oriented type of state, especially when it faces an external threat, risk parameter known as China, North Korea, and so on. In other words, the feeling is that in case the government is doing something wrong, and it is fighting to keep that activity secret, highly secret, it's embarrassing. What is the situation in which someone who feels a moral civic duty to disclose that, which the government at that time considers an absolute secret, because its evil doings are the secret it wants to protect, not the safety of the nation, the safety of the party in power? I'm sorry if I'm setting up a hypothesis, but I think you understand our concern. Thank you.
In America, what about Edward Snowden? There are no safeguards for whistleblowers. Neither.
はい、すみません、金融アナリストでございます、東京、投資リサーチという、会社のものでございます。でも元、ジャーナリストでございます。で非常に率直、なご意見、お話ありがとうございます。でここで申し上げたいことなんでございますが、普通の、その時には大体一般の国民というのは政府はいいことしてくれてるんだろう、我々をちゃんときちんと守ってくれてるんだろうと全く心配しないということだと思うんでございますが、やっぱり、事態が変わりまして、その一般の、その人あるいはその国家公務員でございますね、内部告発をどうしてもしなきゃいけない、倫理的に道義的にやっぱりどうしてもやっぱりこれは言わなきゃいけないと思ったときに、その人を守れるそのセーフガードはどうやって確保するのでしょうか。つまりもしこれ本当に仮の話でございますが、その政府が非倫理的なこと、あるいは違法なこと、あるいは違憲なことをしているということをあるその国家公務員が分かったときに、やっぱりどうしても声を出さなきゃいけないというときに、彼はどうやって守られるのでございましょうか。これ本当にその、過程になるのでございますが、我々その外国人プレスが日本を見ますと、今その政府与党は非常にその国会を完全にそのコントロールしている、支配しているわけでございます。両院を支配しているわけでございます。そしてやっぱり今その憲法を改正するかもしれない、そういうような話をしているわけでございます。右傾化している、あるいはその過去に戻ろうとしているようなその印象を受ける人が多いわけでございます。つまり過去のようなということはよりその国民を支配したがるような、そういうような政府に戻ろうとしているんじゃないかというふうに感じるのでございます。特にその外部要因、例えば中国とか北朝鮮の動きが激しくなりますと、その色がますます出るんじゃないかというふうに懸念するわけでございます。そういう場合にはもしその政府が悪いことをした、イーブルという言葉を使っているので、その悪意のことをしてしまった、ということになりますと、やはりそれを絶対情報として隠したいということもあり得るわけでございます。そして中にいる人がやはりその、道徳上あるいはその倫理上どうしてもそれを言わなきゃいけないという時には、彼はどういうふうにその内部告発者をその、守るセーフガードがあるんでしょうか。で今ちょっと司会者がでもアメリカでもスノーデンを守るためのセーフガードというのはなかったわけであるということでございますが、本当に仮の話でございますが、
後の方の話から言います。別に今我々政府は昔に戻るとか右傾化しようということを考えているわけではありません。
I'd like to talk about some of the later things that you mentioned. I would like to clarify, first of all, that the current government is not attempting to become more towards the right, is not trying to refer to a past form of government.
日本が他の国と比べて、変わっているところがいっぱいあるので、普通の国、他の国と同じようなレベルに日本を今したいと思って仕事をしています。
As a member of government, I think what we all believe is that we're working very hard to achieve is to create a Japan that is a more normal country. In other words, there are many aspects of Japan that are different from other countries of the world. We want to become a regular or normal country.
確かに悪い政府あるいは悪い役人ができた場合に守れるのかというものは一つの大きな課題であると思います。
Of course, the hypothetical issue that you raised is a very, very important and valid one. In other words, how can we protect ourselves from a bad government or from bad bureaucrats?
ただ、普通の法制というのは法律は守るべきものだという形で作られているので、なかなかそこを全部網羅的に制度的にチェックするのは難しいと思います。
Of course, when we establish a law, however, the law is built or established with the fundamental idea that people should obey the law. It's very, very difficult to put together a system that covers every aspect of government.
ただ日本には違法なことをしている場合に告発しても罪にならないという法律はすでにあります。
I would like to make some comments. However, for example, in Japan, there already exists a law that says if you whistleblow or if you reveal wrongdoing in the government, there is nothing, you will not be penalized. What I mean by that is wrongdoing is any illegal activities.
ただこの例えば特定秘密の指定が違法になるということはなかなか考えにくいんでありますが、その時でももしおかしなことをやっているのを正しい公務員が発見して、それを告発した場合、その場合はやはり我々はやはり政治家がしっかりと守らなければならないと思います。
In regard to the hypothetical example that you gave, that if in the designation process, when information is classified as a state secret and that designation is done on an illegal basis, and it's very, very difficult to imagine that something like that might occur. But if something like that were to occur and a civil servant with high moral principles said, I cannot stay silent, I must make this public, in that case, then I think it is up to politicians such as ourselves to do our best to protect such a person.
私は日本という国は良心が必ず報われる国だと考えています。
I personally believe very strongly that Japan is a nation where a person of conscience will eventually be rewarded and recognized.
Before Anthony, I would like to, yes, someone was not yet asked a question, and then please a short question because we are reaching the end. So, thank you.
IWJ の原と申します。よろしくお願いします。短くじゃあ共謀罪について、磯崎さんの方は、どのようにお考えかお聞かせ願いたいです。国内越境組織犯罪防止条約には共謀罪を新たに創設せずに批准している国がほとんどなので、特に創設の理由にはならないのではないかと思うんですが、磯崎さんのお考えをお聞かせ願いたいのと、あとスノーデン氏の行為についてどのように捉えられているか、先ほどの質問の関連でお聞きしたいです。よろしくお願いします。
My name is Hara. I'm from IWJ. Short questions. First of all, in regard to conspiracy law, according to the interpreter could not get the exact name of that law, the UN Convention or treaty. Most nations have not passed a conspiracy law. すみません、国連の何条約とおっしゃいましたか？国連の越境組織犯罪防止条約。越境組織。Excuse me, the treaty to prevent criminal activities by organizations that cross international boundaries, international barriers. They have been able to follow they have been able to ratify agreement to this UN convention or treaty without it passing a conspiracy law. Can you tell us what you think about this matter? And secondly, what do you think about Mr. Snowden?
共謀罪についてはですね、私はちょっと所管でありません。今日は政府の立場で来てますから、ちょっと所管でないことについて、はっきりとお答えすることはできません。
First of all, in regard to the conspiracy law, that is not my area of responsibility, and as I am coming here as a member of the government, I really cannot comment on that right now.
ただいろいろと賛成反対の議論があるのは知っておりますので、やはりここは議論を尽くすことが一番だと思います。
But I am very aware that there's a great deal of discussion and debate about this, and I think it is very, very important to ensure that all of this debate proceeds.
またスノーデンさんのことについてもですね、これはアメリカのことでありますので、私がまたこれいいと悪いというと、またこれまた国際問題になりますので、答えを控えさせていただきたいと思います。
In regard to your question about Mr. Snowden, this is of course an affair that involves the U.S. government, and if I were to make some comments about it, either positive or negative, it might become an international incident, so I would like to refrain from commenting on this.
Okay. And then, please, short question, Anthony.
Okay. It's a question about the necessity for the new law. If Mr. Abe's priority was to establish a national security council, and if the Americans, for example, said, well, we can't give secrets to Japan because you leak information, you don't punish offenders severely enough, would it not have been possible to tighten the penalties within the Military Secrets Act, or even extend the definition of a military secret without going to the trouble of having an entirely new act? Why was it necessary to have an entirely new act?
さっきの質問にちょっと関連するわけでございますが、どうしてこのような法律が必要だったかということでございます。やはり安倍首相が新しいNCSC を設立するのにあたり、やはり例えば米国政府の方からきちんとした法律がないと、秘密を保護する法律がないと、情報を共有できないというふうに言われたといたしましたら、今存在する軍事秘密を保護する法律をより強化するということで十分に対応できなかったんでしょうか。あるいは今存在しております軍事秘密を保護する法律の解釈を、あるいは範囲を広げるということで十分対応できたんじゃないでしょうか。全く新しい秘密保護法を作る必要があったんでしょうか。なぜあったんでしょう。
外国から何か言われてこの法律を作ったという事実はありません。
I would first like to clarify, this law there was no action, by any foreign government or words by foreign governments that led to this secrecy law.
だから国家安全保障の秘密というのは軍事秘密だけに限られず、今言ったように外交とかテロリズムの捜査とかそんなものにも及ぶので今回広げたんですね。
As you know, when we talk about national security, it does not simply involve military secrets, but as I've mentioned earlier, we have included the area of secrets to be so designated to include, for example, the area of diplomacy, the area of investigations into terrorist activities or spy activities as well.
一つやっぱり大事なことだったのはですね、今までの法律は一般の公務員にしか罰則がかかってないということもあります。
One of the important points about this new secrecy law was that until now, the protection of state secrets was covered by the National Public Servants Law, which applied only to general civil servants.
今回やっぱり政治家に対しても罰則をかけたと、これは非常に大きい点だと思いまして、そのためには今の法律の体系ではできなかったということもご理解いただきたいと思います。
This has now been expanded, and this is a very important point about this new secrecy bill, which is that the people who would be possibly penalized are not just simply the civil servants, but also politicians as well. And by having this new change, we could not cover it in using the existing laws.
Jimbo-san will ask the last question. You have 20 seconds to ask your question this time. Thank you.
Okay, just a yes and no question. You mentioned the whistleblower law. The whistleblowers are protected by the whistleblower law. However, it only protects whistleblowers from getting mistreatment in the company. It doesn't protect whistleblowers criminally. So are you saying that whistleblowers if they disclose the secret for the purpose of disclosing illegal activities by the government will be protected under this law? And why is there any clause in this law that penalize the government officials for abusing the authority to designate the law, such as hiding any illegal or unconstitutional activity? There's no clause that penalizes. There's penalty against disclosing the information, but not any penalty against illegal use of this law. So, two questions: whistleblowers are protected by this law criminally, and why there's no clause? Thank you.
はい、2つの簡単な質問でございます。内部告発者でございますが、例えば会社あるいは組織の中に何か犯罪的な行為があったときに、それを告発したときには守られるかというのがよろしかったんでしょうか、神保さん。
はい、秘密保護法では民事でしか、要するに民事でしか守られてないと。ただ今回はじゃあここでやってもこの法律で刑事的に訴追されることはないのかということと、あとなぜこの法律を、違法に用いた場合、つまり違法行為を隠すために使ったりした場合に、その行為に対するペナルティがなぜ全くこの法律に書かれていないのか。
行政側に、
いいですよ。はい。英語で言わないと分かんないじゃないですか。分かんないしいいですか。
英語で聞かれたので。
そうか。刑事的にこれが告発されないという明文の根拠はありません。
In regard to the actual statutes of the law, there is no justification for saying that there will be no criminal prosecution.
しかしやはり違法行為をやっている人を暴くためにですね、良心のある人がそれはおかしいといった行為をした場合にはですね、これはやはり起訴すべきでないですね。
Having said this, however, if a person with high morals or ethical standards finds some example of wrongdoing, illegal activities, and therefore speaks out, then that person should not be prosecuted.
でそれは日本では検察官に起訴するかどうかの判断の権限はありますから、そこが私は正当な判断をすべきだと思います。
In Japan, you know that the people who have the authority to bring an indictment or a prosecution, are the prosecutors, public prosecutors, so they will, I believe and hope that they will make the correct decision.
で2つ目はですね、よく違法な秘密の指定をした行政機関の長に罰則をかけるべきだという意見もよく聞きます。
And in regard to your second point, this is something that I've heard frequently, that should not there be some kind of penalty given to the head of the administrative organ or organization that makes an illegal or wrong designation for a state secret?
考え方は理解できるんですが、日本の行政法の中で行政機関の長に罪を課した例は一つもないんです。
I certainly understand what you are saying, however, or what some people are saying. However, if we look at the law that governs the Japanese administrative branch of government, there is no provision for bringing some kind of penalty against the head of an administrative organ.
もしこれを認めるとですね、いろんなところに影響が出てきますから、もうこれは理屈としては理解できるところもありますけど、これは慎重に私は検討すべきだと思います。
If the head of the administrative organization could be penalized in that way, I think it might lead to many other difficulties as a result. In fact, the ramifications could be quite enormous. So although I understand the principle, I think it needs to be further deliberated.
罰則はなくてもそういうふうにしてはいけないということを書き込むこともできなかったんですか？
So you can't even include a statute that says that kind of action should not be done, even in the law?
書いていけないということはないんですけど、それはもうこういうふうに指定をしなさいと書いてるわけでありますから、それは守るのが当然ですから書いてないということですね。
It's possible to include that kind of language. However, what is written in the law is that this is the way that you designate specific state secrets, and so it is only natural to expect and assume that people will follow those instructions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Isozaki, for all your clarifications. Thank you for coming to the club in your capacity as advisor to the Prime Minister. It's not a secret that we want to invite all the cabinet ministers to the club, so if you can pass the message, we would be very pleased. And thank you very much for coming and accept our one-year honorary membership card. Thank you. You can bring your friends from Oitaken to the club.
Thank you very much. はい。どうもありがとうございました。